Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time this morning. Those of you who know me well know I'm not a morning person, so I'll do the best I can this morning. But we're so excited to have our first annual State of the Economy event, and I'm so excited that you are here. You are here because you are drivers of our economy. You are Amarillo Canyon area, and we really appreciate the teamsmanship, the partnerships, the collaborations that we can garner by working together. First of all, I would like to introduce a few people and then just talk a little bit about what the AEDC is doing, and then we have our special panel, our special guests this morning, speakers. I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors who, if they hadn't come forward, we would not be able to do an event like this. It's not in our budget, and so we really appreciate the sponsorship. And that is Underwood Law Firm, NCW Insurance, Western Builders, Street Toyota, OJD Engineering, and Panhandle PBS. And thank you all so much for doing what you're doing this morning. I would also like to introduce our council who is here. Mayor Nelson could not be here this morning, but if you would please stand up. Howard Smith, wherever you are. You were out, yes. Elaine Hayes, I know Elaine's sitting here. Frida Powell, thank you, Frida. Dr. Eddie Sauer. Thanks, Eddie. We also want you to know who the board members are of the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, the people that you can ask questions, you can discuss issues and challenges and ideas and innovations, and I want you to know who they are. They are Brian Bruckner. I don't know if Brian's here this morning. Brian Heinrich. I know Brian Heinrich is here. If you'd stand up, thank you. Scott Bentley. Thank you, Scott. And Lloyd Brown. All of you are here because you are, as I said, economic drivers, the leaders of what happens in our community, because you care, because you will be here. I remember when I went through the Amarillo Canyon leadership course so many years ago, John Marmaduke was talking to us about volunteerism and work, and he said the very first thing you need to understand is be there. And so we're all in that mindset, is be there, and I really appreciate that. I'm proud to have served as chairman for the past year. I'm Laura Street, chairman of the board of directors of the AEDC. It's a unique opportunity for our community and our organization to host an event like this. We are very excited about it. Our mission is to promote business expansion in the greater Amarillo area that builds a stronger, more diversified economy and increases the economic vitality and wealth of the community. Our objective is to create an environment that provides a dialogue for all of our stakeholders and allows them to have insight and understanding about the economic health and future opportunities of Amarillo. We have worked and will continue to work for a greater connection within and without the Amarillo area. This includes stronger relationships with you, our economic drivers. We want our entire community to feel that the AEDC belongs to them. And as board member Brian Heinrich said in an interview recently, the AEDC belongs to the citizens of Amarillo, and we truly believe that. You will hear more about the AEDC and its plan going forward as time goes on. There is an internal and an external environment. Internal is within our organization, internal is within our community, external is outside of our community, where we are trying to create discussion and dialogue and interest. That external environment is changing fast. The internal environment needs to be adaptive and needs to change with it. And the reason we're having this discussion is because of that fast-changing environment. We've invited top executives to the field to talk with us. We are adaptable as a city, which I think we've been able to show in the last few years. Things are changing fast and we are adaptable. As you know, we're in a search for our next CEO, and we're very optimistic about the possibilities. I would like to introduce the team, the search committee that is going to find our next CEO, and if you will stand as I say your name. Brian Heinrich is our chairman of this committee. Brian. There's Lloyd Brown, the other board member on the committee, and then Michelle Reichert from Pantex. I saw you this morning, Michelle, thank you. Shannon Massey from Bell Helicopter, Bell, I'm working on that one. Jason Herrick, thank you, Jason, and Bob Williams. Thank you all for the time and the effort that you're going to put into this. There's a great deal of competition for economic professionals, and many cities are finding now that an economic focus should be something that is in their best interest for growth and progress. I believe that Amarillo is poised with an enthusiastic, experienced, educated, and innovative culture. We have a great deal to offer the best professionals in economic development to be successful. But do we have to hire an economic professional? Maybe not. We are going to hire the right person, whoever that person is, one with the background that fits our needs and our wants. I would also like to thank our senior staff who have just been amazing at going forward, and we are running the business, and we are running it very well, but it's through the staff that we're able to do that. And if you would please stand, I want you to know who they are so that you can talk with them also if you want to. Our interim CEO is Doug Nelson, right there in the back. Vice President of Strategic Marketing and Communications is Reagan Hales. She's also in the back. Do we always put you guys in the back? You're supposed to be up here. Office Administrator is Chris Lyles, keeps us all together. And Sabrina Perez, Director of Workforce. Thank you, Sabrina, back in the back also. And Savannah Tarbett, our intern. It is amazing the amount of work and production that they are doing at this particular time, and the board is very, very much behind what is happening. We are excited to provide a wonderful program for you today. I will introduce our first speaker in just a few minutes, and it's an opportunity to review the activity and strategy of the AEDC in 2019, and I think you will find that this is a very robust presentation. And now I'd like to show a short video of the AEDC. Fun, huh? You have an honest picture, an honest view of what's going on in our area. We have a lot to be proud of. There's a lot of work that has been done in the past by those who come before us, but we have a lot of potential. We are really looking at the areas that we need to bolster and the areas that we need to continue to strengthen. Great video, guys. Good job. Now, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Scott Nations. Nations is the President and Chief Investment Officer of NationsShares, and he's a best-selling author. He's a regular contributor on CNBC, where he discusses markets, current economic events, and the outlook of various financial vehicles. The health of our area's economy shapes the lives of every area Panhandle resident. This event will help us all understand the trajectory of our community and how local and national level issues are shaping our future. This discussion isn't just for the business community, it's for everyone who makes a financial decision in their household. And we have brought from the polar vortex, Mr. Scott Nations. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. My wife, Wendy, and I have been coming to Amarillo for 20 years now. We have friends here. We've made more friends this week, so thank you for having us. I want to begin by applauding you and your Economic Development Corporation, because not a lot of cities of any size could put together an event like this. In Chicago and around the world, everybody saw the scrum as people tried to attract Amazon, and you saw some interesting work and some not so interesting work and some inspired work and some that wasn't so inspired. And I think that putting together an event like this is really impressive. I applaud you. Also, I mentioned that Wendy and I have been coming to Amarillo for 20 years. I think what is going on with your downtown is absolutely fantastic. I think it is just the greatest thing going, because we can tell the difference. Just coming in the other day, we could tell the difference, and I know you're excited to have your baseball stadium open, and I think that's going to be fantastic. We are already angling for tickets. So I'm going to talk about the broader macroeconomic outlook for Amarillo and the area. We'll talk about some specifics as far as the economy is concerned. One is going to be very generic. It's going to apply to everybody who is in business, runs a business, owns a business, has clients or customers who are entrepreneurs, or as Laura said, is making an economic decision. So the goal here today, the whole goal, is to help everybody make better business or economic decisions. And so we're going to talk about some macroeconomic issues. The first one, again, is going to be generic. That's going to be interest rates. And then we're going to talk about a couple that are more specific to Amarillo and what is going on here. We'll talk about energy prices. We'll talk specifically about crude oil, but also about natural gas. I know natural gas is important to this part of Texas. Again, Wendy and I came in from Chicago. We had 3 furnaces going full blast, 24 hours, burning natural gas. The high temperature yesterday in Chicago was 12 degrees below zero. So I think we probably burned a whole bunch of it. So thanks so much for that. But so let's get into it. And again, we're going to talk about several things. We'll try and focus again on the things that are important to Amarillo. If we can get this to work. We got the first slide up. That's actually pretty impressive. There we go. So we're going to talk about interest rates. We're going to talk about energy prices, and mostly crude oil, but also natural gas. We're going to talk about agricultural commodities, which I know are important to Texas and specifically to the Panhandle. And then we're going to talk, and actually I was able to talk with Dusty about this a little bit earlier today. We're going to talk about China trade, because the trade battle we are in right now with China is going to impact not just the flooring business, but everything that you grow or raise in this part of the world when it comes to agricultural commodities. So we're going to talk about those issues. And one more, there we go. Again, the goal is to learn how to make, for everybody to make better economic decisions, whether you're in business or not, because, and if these apply to you, then that's great. And even if they don't, again, you probably have clients or customers or friends or neighbors for whom it is really important. I will offer some forecasts. As Laura pointed out, I'm a contributor to CNBC. I'm on all the time. I know that people want to hear kind of where the rubber meets the road. So I'll offer some forecasts. Take them all with a grain of salt. So the first one, interest rates. Every business is impacted by interest rates, and if you look at the 5-year history for interest rates, the red line is longer term interest rates, the black line on the bottom is shorter term, you think, wow, they've all gone up. And if you're a capital intensive business, that's important. If you have clients or customers in capital intensive businesses, you're thinking, wow, that must be horrible. But let's put this in context. There we go. The 50-year history for interest rates. So there's no other takeaway here. There's no other context but to think that while interest rates have increased over the past few years, historically they are still very low. They're very low. So if you are thinking about making a business decision that requires borrowing or lending, this is going to be important to you because, again, interest rates are historically very low. If you wait, despite kind of what happened in the market this week, where it looks like interest rates are going to stay at about the same level for the next, well, probably for the rest of the year. If you expect or hope that interest rates are going to fall, say, through the rest of 2019, I think that you are kind of swimming against the tide. Interest rates are very low right now. I don't see them going down. So if you're thinking about making that decision and you're hoping that interest rates go lower so you hold off, I would just say this: hope is a really horrible strategy. So if they do increase, if interest rates were to increase throughout the year, they are those increases are likely to be very, very gradual, particularly after what the Federal Reserve said yesterday. So, okay. Crude oil prices, spot crude oil price in Cushing, Oklahoma. The big spike is the one that we all lived through in 2008. For some people, that's a horrible thing. For some people, that's a wonderful thing. The takeaway here is that while OPEC no longer controls the price of oil like they did, say, 20 years ago, they are still very important. Now, why don't they control the price of oil as they did, say, 20 years ago? Well, again, I'm going to applaud you. It's largely because of domestic production, particularly fracking. We have been waiting forever for the United States to become a net exporter of crude oil, at least. And that happened kind of barely, with a bunch of caveats and an asterisk, the last week in November. So the last week in November of last year, we actually exported more crude oil than we imported. Now that's not really going to continue, but we're very close to equilibrium. But OPEC and OPEC Plus, so all of the members of OPEC and Russia, have a vested interest in keeping the price of oil high, particularly Saudi Arabia. So I would consider $50 to be the low. We'll call that the low. I would expect that to be a floor. And the crude oil market does not operate purely supply and demand. As you can see, OPEC plays sheriff. So they produce and export about 12 million barrels of crude oil a day, and they are happy to modulate that so that the price is where they want it to be. They're also working for the first time, one step back, they're also working for the first time with Russia. Now, Russia is not really doing what Russia had promised they would do, so they're not a reliable partner. But it's important to know that all sorts of producers are focused on essentially having a floor on energy prices where they are right now, again, about $50 a barrel. Another reason that is likely to be sustained is because we found out this week that about 500,000 barrels per day of production from Venezuela is no longer going to be available to our market. So if you are in the energy business and you're producing crude oil, I would certainly expect $50 to be the low for the year. I would expect crude oil prices, as the Saudis get serious about curbing their own production, I would not be surprised if we saw $60 a barrel by the end of the year. Let's talk about natural gas real quick, because I know that's important here. Despite the polar vortex, natural gas prices have not spiked. Now, they spiked really impressively in December, very transient. Here's the thing. You guys produce a ton of natural gas in this area. You may actually be your own worst enemies because you produce so much of it and it's tough to export. Natural gas prices are very volatile. So here's the thing. Just below $3 right now, I would expect it to stay about there because you produce so much of it around here. It's tough to export, so I don't see how, absent some new demand, new industrial demand, it's tough to see how natural gas is going to rally very much in 2019. Again, it is incredibly volatile. That's an incredibly volatile commodity. So it might bounce around, but sustained above, say, 3.5, it's tough to see. But let's go to agricultural commodities now. As I told people last night, my father worked for John Deere for 30 years. Agriculture literally and figuratively put food on my plate when I was growing up in Kansas. So this is near and dear to my heart. I've tried to focus, though, on some of the commodities that are more important to Amarillo. So you see corn at the bottom, more or less sideways over the last 10 years. Beans and cotton have bounced around a little bit more. The purple vertical line, though, is probably what is important here. The purple vertical line, that is about the time we got into a trade battle with China. I'm not going to be political. You can say that we're standing up for ourselves. You can say that we're getting into a fight that we don't need to be getting into. That's a political discussion. What matters economically is, again, that vertical line. You can see that both cotton and soybeans in particular fell off in price when we got into a trade spat with China. Why is that? Well, it's because they import a bunch of that stuff from us. So that's tough. If you're producing beans in particular, the soybean option pit on the Chicago Board of Trade is very close to where I stand when I do CNBC. I have good friends in that pit, and I talk to them all the time. And soybean prices fell precipitously when that happened. So if you're a producer, or you work with soybean producers, or really any agricultural producer, it's a pretty tough time right now because prices drop so precipitously. That's the bad news. Here's the good news, and there is some good news here. In fact, there could be some great news. Any trade deal that the United States ends up doing with China is going to have two parts to it. We're going to get two things. The first one is intellectual property protection. So if a manufacturer, it doesn't matter if they're producing iPhones or industrial equipment, wants to do business in China, then right now they essentially show their cards as far as their intellectual property. And China has not been very good about respecting the rights of intellectual property owners. That is going to change. That's the first thing, and that's good for us. Here's what's great for Amarillo. This is the second thing. Any deal is going to require China to buy a bunch more stuff from the United States, because the second thing that we're going to demand is that they close the trade gap. And what are they going to buy? Here we go. They're going to buy this stuff. Why? Because they can use all of it. We produce a ton of it. We're the low-cost, high-quality producer. They need it, and so it's easy for them to buy all of the stuff that Amarillo grows. So congratulations to you. Not only is China, when we get back to normal, a really good customer right now, they're going to become a much better customer. They're going to become a much better customer. Again, if you're a producer right now, it's tough, and it's that the most entrepreneurial people in the world are American farmers. And so it's tough, but I think things are going to get better. So again, the trade battle with China is the biggest story. Last week we thought progress was being made. Wilbur Ross, who's the Commerce Secretary, kind of cold water on that, but I do think that we'll reach some sort of agreement, some sort of deal relatively quickly. So maybe not the first quarter of this year, but certainly by the middle of the year. Okay. So we're talking about the state of the economy. What is the state of your economy? I think it's outstanding. I think it's very strong. I think it's very strong. I think you should be very proud. But let's look at each of these issues. The first one is that interest rates are historically low, and if they rise, they're going to do so slowly. So that's a thumbs up for you. A lot of businesses around here are going to be capital intensive. I know agriculture can be, so that's a great thing. Second thing, energy prices. Frackers are now in charge of energy prices to a degree they never were before. So industrial production is now in charge of, or really is playing an important role in global energy prices, because obviously every barrel of oil that we produce here, we don't have to import from someplace else. So that's a real thumbs up. Crude oil prices, I think, have likely bottomed. Again, we saw some nice appreciation in crude oil futures this week. I think they've likely bottomed. I would be surprised if we saw anything convincingly below 50. Is that good for you or bad for you? Well, if you're a producer, it's good for you, and if you're a consumer, whether you're a retail consumer or you run a business that's very energy intensive, that's probably not the greatest thing in the world. So again, that depends on your outlook. Agricultural prices are certainly lower due to tariffs. Certainly lower due to, and that's, again, horrible if you are a producer, but that is likely to be temporary. And I think it will be, well, guys like me like to say temporary, and they can mean 3 years or they can mean 3 months, depending on whatever happens. I will say I think it's going to be shorter rather than longer. The Chinese need a win, too. The Chinese need a win in this. So not only does the president need a win, they need a win. And the important thing here is that when we do reach some sort of conclusion, agricultural producers are going to be better off than they were before. It's not going to be just a matter of getting back to where they were, get back to zero. I think they're going to be not only better off, substantially better off. So if you grow something that China particularly likes to import, you are going to be in great shape. So that's my outlook. I think, again, the state of your economy is very strong. I can tell that people love living in Amarillo and they're proud of what is going on, whether it's downtown or with your businesses. We talked a little bit last night. I'd also say that the diversity that I see in the business in Amarillo is a real strong suit. We have seen regions or municipalities or cities that really got overboard with a single industry. And Detroit is the case study in that. Chicago did to a certain degree in finance. But you have so much diversity that I think you are in a very strong position. Yes, energy and agriculture are going to be very important. But I was talking about Bell with some people last night, and the fact that they look to be in, well, we'll call it the front runner when it comes to the V280. The Valor. I know you're also doing a lot of business in animal husbandry. I think you guys are in great shape. So that's my outlook. I think, again, to wrap it up, I think you guys are in great shape. Tony is going to talk about workforce employment and that sort of thing. I think that's also another important area. To the degree that you can build a workforce that is diverse and has a variety of educations, I think you're going to be in even better shape in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. That is some very interesting information. Thank you for being here this morning. Good morning. I'm Elaine Hayes. I'm Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Amarillo, and we are just delighted that you are here this morning to be a part of this larger discussion on the health of our local economy. Entrepreneurs, small business owners are the bedrock of our local economy. Everything else builds upon that. And so we need to be sure that we are doing everything possible as a community to be sure that our local small businesses are growing and thriving. One of our goals, and when I say our goal, I'm talking about from a city perspective, the EDC, the WT Enterprise Center, our Small Business Administration, and the EDC, so many different community partners that are working together that I think is an incredible strength in our community, that when we get out of our territorial corners and operating in our silos and partner together for the benefit of our community, we are making some incredible progress. One of our shared visions is that we would like Amarillo to be known across the nation as the #1 best place in the country to own and operate your own business. That does not happen without an intentional, purposeful interaction. As we begin making those engagements, we want to be sure that we, again, are providing information such as this, events that help to strengthen, and information does drive and help us make good decisions. So if you live in Amarillo, Texas, and you have a good business idea, we want to help you succeed. If you don't live in Amarillo, Texas, pack up your bags and get here as soon as you can. Amarillo, unlike most other cities, relies very heavily on sales tax collections within our general fund to provide the basic city services. As I have traveled around the city just meeting with other elected officials, I have found that this is very uncommon. Most of the times you will see in those general funds that the majority of contribution comes from property taxes. We are a bit of an outlier that we rely 33% of our general fund that pays for services such as police, fire, street repairs is coming from sales tax. Our second contributor is from property tax in an amount of around 22%. So it is vital to not just our local economy, but our ability as a city to provide the services that our citizens expect and demand and should expect, that we keep those local sales taxes strong. At the end of 2017, we had, and it was depicted in one of the charts earlier that the EDC had up, we had relatively 2 flat years of sales tax collections. And at the end of 2017, we actually had a decline. And because we are so heavily dependent on those sales tax collections, as I mentioned, to provide those basic city services, it certainly got our attention. So we began, the city in cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce and some other business entities and local retailers in the EDC, began making a concerted effort to proactively engage our community in supporting our local businesses. We began a communications effort using television, radio, social media, speaking engagements, local events to educate our community on the importance of supporting those local businesses. One of the things, especially with the current millennial generation, is a need to be involved in something larger than just themselves. and recognizing that so many of our local businesses are owned and operated by families, that is their bread and butter, that's how they put food on the table for their families, is a great motivator for a lot of our community, as well as wanting to protect that shopping experience, being able to go in, have the convenience that it is here locally, and actually engage and be able to go into a brick and mortar store. As we began communicating that, we realized adding connecting another dot that I don't know that had been previously addressed is that recognition of how those local sales taxes that are collected impact our ability to provide services. We began just calculating the math and looking at the 79,000 households that we have here roughly in Amarillo and looking at what incremental changes per household, $100, $500, $1,000 per household, how that impacted our bottom line of the cash that we were able to come in to the city's general fund. We were very intentional to not indicate that it was necessary for our local community to stop 100% of their shopping, going out of town, shopping online. Number one, it's just not a reality. It wasn't going to happen, nor was it necessary and required for it to be very successful for us to encourage and increase our local sales tax. Well, it has worked. When we looked at, again, that trend of flat and then down, this past year, our sales tax collections for the 2017-2018 fiscal year were up over $1 million, almost 3%, and it allowed us, from a city budgeting perspective, to be able to hire 17 new police officers, 5 new firefighters, and make a much-needed upgrade to our 911 call system. And so far, for the first 4 months of our fiscal 2018-2019 year, we are up over 4.5%. So we are moving in the right direction. And this has been basically from just a level 1 engagement with our local shopping community. As we move into this next year, our focus is going to be on a level 2 engagement, which is you guys. It is beginning to reach out more to our local business owners and engaging with you to understand how you can partner with us in the By the Way campaign to be able to identify and brand, encouraging the strengthening of our local economy. When at the end of today's event, I know you're going to be getting a handout that you can mark in boxes to indicate areas you would like more information. Please mark the By the Way box, and we will be sure that somebody from the chamber or the city contacts you to give you a lot more details on this level of engagement that comes from the small business owner and not just from the shoppers. One of the mayor's favorite words right now is momentum. And it's because we have fantastic momentum going in our city right now on a lot of different fronts. Help us, partner with us to keep the momentum going in the area of our sales tax collections as well. Our next speaker is Mr. Tony DeLisi. And when I was reading through Tony's bio, one of the things that jumped out to me is that he definitely shares one of the visions that our city has and is factually one of the pillars that our city council identified as our goals for the next year, 10 years, 20 years down the road, and that is developing a highly skilled workforce. It is crucial in being able to attract industries and new businesses to our community, but even beyond that, it is vital in being able to offer opportunities to every individual that lives in this community, every neighborhood, every corner of this city, giving kids, that next generation, current adults, the opportunity that many times is going to come through more training, more education, the opportunities to get a higher paying job through higher skills is something that is near and dear to our hearts. And so I am very excited to hear Tony share with us this morning. but I'm going to read some more about you. I see you moving to stand up. Tony is Avalanche Consulting's vice president, where he focuses on workforce and economic development strategies, project management, research, and client support. He's passionate about helping communities build on their competitive strengths to address challenges, inspire innovation, and grow in an inclusive manner. Tony is currently helping communities develop strategies that link education and skills training, economic development, and community development. He believes that addressing barriers to economic inclusion is critical to unlocking untapped potential in every community. Helping individuals find rewarding careers and businesses find the talent they need to succeed in the future. Prior to joining Avalanche, Tony was Director of Research at Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, supporting economic development efforts in the Austin region. He's also worked as an independent economic development consultant, performing project work for new economy strategies and other firms. Tony holds a master's in urban and regional planning from the Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Holds a BS in Earth Systems with a focus on land management from Stanford University. He's the son of a U.S. diplomat, grew up overseas, living and traveling in countries throughout Asia, Africa, and developing an appreciation for the diversity of experiences across the globe. Mr. Tony DeLisi.
I was told I got to do it like this. All right. Thank you for the introduction. And Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the great introduction. And yeah, I did grow up overseas. Somebody asked me this morning if I'm from Texas originally, and I don't have the bumper sticker, but I should, that I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as quick as I could. Been in Austin for a long time now, but we travel all around the country and work with communities like Amarillo on some of these topics. And I think it's been wonderful to hear Scott and all the other introductions to this area, because Amarillo is really amazing in that this is a very independent community. Y'all have done it on your own for so many years, making businesses work, small businesses in particular, and entrepreneurs really figuring things out and making this community work. And it's really impressive, and it needs to continue to happen. And that's why seeing all these faces in this room, hearing about the efforts from the city, the EDC, and others is so inspiring. A quick introduction. I'm with Avalanche Consulting. We are a national economic and workforce development consulting firm. So we do strategic planning work with economic development groups, cities, regions, states, all across the country. I just flew in from Chattanooga, Tennessee last night, where we're working on a strategy. But we've done work for Atlanta, Charleston, Charlotte. I was in Sonoma County, California a year and a half ago when the fires hit in the middle of developing a strategy. So we see a whole range of different unique issues and challenges that face local economies when we're trying to help them understand and grow on that local level. What policy decisions, what can businesses do to get involved and really make things work. And I really had the privilege of working here in Amarillo. I was visiting town 4 or 5 times through a strategy, but helped the city and the EDC come together and develop a comprehensive strategy for the community. It was called Align Amarillo. I see a number of familiar faces in the room, including on that video as well, that came together and tried to understand what are some of the great assets that we have here in the community, as well as some of those challenges that we're trying to address, and how can everybody get out of their silos, work together around common goals, and keep taking the community to the next level so that we continue to thrive into the future. And today, when we're looking at economic development, I think it's important to remember that there's a lot of factors that go into this. I'm not the national or international macroeconomist. I don't understand all those factors every day, but we do dig into communities to know what are all the different things that come into play that affect what's happening. And that can range from housing availability, it can go to international trade issues and connectivity to the global markets. It includes things like health and human safety. There's so many things that come into play to understand how well a community is doing, where we need to put some of our resources and our efforts. But today, I really want to focus on talent and education, because increasingly, this is one of the biggest topics that we see in every community across the country, and I know it's an incredibly important one here in Amarillo. When we're talking about our economy, we're talking about people. We're talking about creating jobs for people. At the end of the day, it's not about a job number. It's about creating good quality jobs that can give people in that community wealth to then invest and buy more products. And that's that virtuous cycle that we want. At the end of the day, a thriving economy is one where everybody has good, meaningful work that they can then invest in their families, in homes, and across their community. So it really is the foundation of our economy. And there was some discussion earlier about the competition for jobs and the competition between communities. There's so many folks working on these issues. Often we hear about that competition for things like Amazon and their headquarters and what people are putting on the table. But the competition is also high for talent. We hear everybody in communities across the country saying we can't find the right people. We struggle to attract them in, to retain them, to find the right skill sets. And Amarillo is just one city in one MSA looking at a whole country full of folks. And additionally, we're playing on a global market with this as well. So really, we need to think about how do we locally invest in these factors. We do a survey of economic development organizations and businesses quarterly, I think, I can't remember. But when we do that survey, we ask folks to rank the factors that come up the most. Is it availability of land? Is it the affordability of utilities? And consistently, for the last 5+ years, talent, access to talent, skills, those come up as the #1 issue that we hear from businesses. And that's whether a business is looking to locate into a community or if it's an existing business trying to grow and expand and find those people that they need to keep their business afloat. And so when we think about site selection, and I don't want this to just be about attracting in that big employer like Amazon, this also applies to local businesses. But those factors have really changed. There's still a lot that people look for. Geographic location matters, and the types of industries that exist here, like agriculture and energy. Physical infrastructure understanding, if we have those utilities in place, if we have that business climate, and Texas has one of the best in the nation to support businesses. But really, that talent factor has risen to the top. I talked to those site selectors, I talked to those businesses, and what they're looking for is places where they know that they will have a steady supply of strong workers that can keep them afloat going into the future. So, what's going on in that hunt for workers? It's tough. It's hard to find people. I'm assuming everybody in this room, raise your hand if you run a business and you've had trouble hiring somebody recently. So that looks like about half the room. So Amarillo, I think we saw that stat in the video at the beginning, has some of the lowest unemployment in the state of Texas. We see here the United States unemployment's been dropping steadily since the recession. Texas has consistently been under that. We did pretty well through the recession, but we're about on par with the US. Everybody else is catching up. Amarillo has stayed below all of that throughout this entire time. It has been tough to find workers consistently, even when the economy wasn't doing as great. And that's a real challenge, but you're not alone in this. The earlier slide showed only Midland has lower unemployment rate right now. Amarillo is the #2 lowest for a metropolitan area in the state of Texas. And Texas is one of the lowest in the nation. So it's not like the workers are waiting around and they're looking to come to Amarillo. They're not anywhere. Every place is having challenges finding those folks, finding the right skill sets. And that shouldn't be a despairing thing. That should be inspiring that we can do this because we need to invest in ourselves, in our own community. So when part of understanding this dynamic, though, is yes, unemployment is low. It's hard to find people. It's hard to find people with the right skill sets. At the same time, the nature of work is changing very rapidly. We've looked at a lot of studies. You hear a lot in the news about AI and automation. It's changing jobs, and we're going to lose all these factors. Some of them are really alarming, and some of them are much more modest. We've looked at a lot of those different studies, and we try to take one of the more conservative estimates done by Oxford University, and you can look at occupations that exist and what their chances are that they're going to be less in demand. That doesn't mean they're going away, but by the year 2030, are there going to be less openings? Are people going to be looking less frequently for these jobs? When I run Amarillo's economy through that little matrix to understand which of those jobs fit in, 31,000 jobs, that's more than a quarter of the jobs in Amarillo, are at risk for that disruption. That's in the next 10 years being less in demand. That doesn't mean they're going to go away entirely or overnight, but this is something that we're all talking about, we're all thinking about, and it's really important that as we think about our economy and how we're going to keep it afloat and keep growing, that we're considering these factors moving forward. It's not all bad news, though. Those jobs that are most at risk of going away, of not being in demand, they don't pay as well. Many of them are often dangerous. They tend to be fairly repetitive. The most solid jobs, the stabler jobs, they pay higher salaries. Those are the jobs that we want to grow for our community and keep people here growing wealth in the local economy. And then when we're thinking about the jobs that we're creating to replace those jobs, they're also going to be higher skill, higher pay. So we might be losing some jobs in the future, but the jobs that we're creating consistently are going to need something beyond high school, whether that's a certificate, an associate degree, bachelor's degree, some form of training to ensure that people can be employed and that employers can find those people that they need. And again, the story is positive because those new jobs with higher education, they pay better. Those are the good opportunities. Those are the jobs that we want for our kids and to really grow the economy for everybody, which has benefits across the board. So these are some of the factors that we see going on. And I think the big takeaway, though, is that the way that we're going to fix this is looking at our own economy. We're not going to find those workers from somewhere else. Unemployment is low everywhere. We've seen this. They're not moving around. And Amarillo's growth is a little slower than Texas. It's a little slower than most of the other communities in the state. But you have your children and your adults that are living here. One of the stories that we heard when we were doing the strategic plan consistently was we want to create those jobs here in the community that keep our kids here. So when they go off to college, that they come back, that they're good, well-paying jobs that are based on that education, and we're not losing folks to Dallas, to Denver, to wherever they might go. So focusing on this is critical to making sure that we're able to have that thriving, vibrant future where our kids come back, where they stay here, and where our adults that are here are prepared for those new jobs that we're going to be creating, that we're not disrupted too heavily. And I just wanted to touch a little bit at the end here on the fact that y'all are doing this. There's tremendous work occurring right now. Amarillo College, WT, Amarillo ISD, the Amarillo Area Foundation, the city, the county, everybody is partnering around this. I was incredibly excited at the end of our strategic planning process when the city council was adopting it. At the same time, they were coming forward to make a resolution to create and expand the Thrive Scholarship Program, where students in the ISD with qualifying GPAs can go and get an education. They can get that skill set that they need to find that employment at low to no cost. And that is so critical to these days, is figuring out what are those skills that we need. And they're not all bachelor's degrees. Not everybody needs to go out and get a bachelor's in poetry. That's not going to help everything. There's still value in bachelor's degrees. I'm not dissing on that. But associate degree, there's certificates, there's a whole spectrum of education today that is directly tied to good quality jobs that we're creating. And that spectrum needs to expand because it's only going to get more critical that our people have those resources, have the things that they need to continue to thrive in the future. So through those efforts, and we saw some of this in the slides too, which I loved. I didn't even plan this, was queuing some of it up. We are moving the needle already. Just since I was last out here working on the strategy a year and a half ago, we've seen the labor force growth increase. For a few years here in Amarillo, the size of the labor force participating, folks looking for a job that were under 64 years old, was flat. There was no growth in the labor force. And we see that in those unemployment levels. Just in the 1 year alone, most recent data we have, we saw a 2% growth in Amarillo's active labor force. That's tremendous. That's faster than we see in the US. Many communities, we're seeing it drop. We're seeing them get older, we're seeing young folks leave, and it's a real challenge for employers, for the sustainability of the economy. Still not quite as on par as Texas, but Texas, we're a rock star just across the board. It is leading the nation in so many of these statistics. And on that educational attainment side, it's wonderful to see that needle is moving upward. From 2012 to 2017, we increased the number of folks in the community with an associate degree. We increased the number of folks with a bachelor's degree. And we need to continue to push that upward because those are the people that are going to fill those jobs, those new openings as we have them moving forward, really tied to the employers, to all y'all in the room. The thing that I really want to leave with, though, is a challenge, and this goes to everybody here. I know there's a lot of businesses here, there's leaders, and the key is creating your own workforce. You can't wait around anymore, and Amarillo knows this. This is a pioneering community. This is a community that has done it on its own, and the days of waiting for the federal government, for the state government to come in and fix things, if they ever did that, they're over. Cities and communities are figuring this out on their own. And also, we saw those stats on unemployment, the days of hoping that people are going to move here, that we're going to attract in everybody that we need to the community, that's going to be tough. Everybody is trying to do that. The people that know and love this community the best are the people that are born and raised here, and they are your greatest asset. And so to everybody here, if you're running a business, if you have challenges thinking about hiring, or if you're not even thinking about these topics, I'd say start thinking about it, and you need to make an investment. And that might be in yourself and your own skills, it might be in your employees, and it might be in your youth. It might be in somebody else's kids that you don't even know, but they are the way that you're going to move your community forward. So think about how your skill needs are changing, what you need to be doing to learn in your work and in your field. And go to an educator. Go to AC. Dr. Lowry Hart, I don't know if he's here. Yeah, I see you there. You got a tremendous resource in that with WT, with everybody here. Talk to somebody, figure this out, and really, at the end of the day, you got to put some money where your mouth is. Businesses can't wait for somebody to appear with all the skills that they need. It's going to take y'all showing up and putting some effort into this. It's not going to come easy, but I believe we can do it. And with that, I just want to say thank you. It's wonderful to be back here in Amarillo.
Try to move this down. Wow, what a privilege and an honor to be a part of this lineup today. I am just so thrilled to see the faces of our community, our clients, our advisory board members, people I've grown up with through my time in Amarillo, just coming together to really support our economy and our ecosystem. I would consider all of us in this room this morning to be ecosystem builders in Amarillo. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this huge movement or momentum that we have going on in Amarillo. I wanted to take a few minutes to just really share the WT Enterprise Center and who we are and what we do. The Enterprise Center is an entrepreneur support organization located off Northwestern Street in Amarillo. I'm sure many of you have been there throughout the years, but if you haven't been, we would love to have you come out and take a tour of our new facility and just talk to you about the new programs and events that we have going on in Amarillo. We have been serving this community for over 17 years. We were founded in 2001. We're a mixed-use incubator. We've also started a co-working space. In 2019, we're launching an accelerator program to help grow local technology companies in this region, as well as attract new technology companies to this region. This is a community initiative. We've had support from Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, Bell, Pantex, Happy State Bank, a lot of community members in this program. So that's one of the biggest things that we're doing this year and that I would encourage you to be a part of and be on the lookout for. couple of stats that I wanted to share from the Enterprise Center. Entrepreneurship is really crucial to economic development in Amarillo. It's, again, part of the puzzle for this huge map of success that we're building. But of the 63 active companies that are still reporting data to the WT Enterprise Center, they are supporting 1,053 jobs. And this is just 63 companies that are reporting 1,053 jobs. They created 244 new jobs in 2018. These are W-2 jobs, so very well-paying jobs. And they've created over $173 million back to this community from exporting and trading their products and services internationally and throughout the globe. So we're just really excited about the clients that we're working with, the impact that they're making in the community, and the things that are happening in Amarillo. So again, that's a little bit about the WT Enterprise Center, pretty short. I want to make sure we get to the rest of the program. But again, I would encourage you to come visit us, take a tour, and just find out more about the programs and services that we are working on here in Amarillo. Thank you.
I love those videos. I think it's so great to see members of our community and the roles that they're serving, just in all the different positions and the businesses they represent in our community, and just to show that while sometimes we think about the economy as these big theoretical principles or numbers or statistics, our economy is really about the people that we live with. And they're about people like my daughters and their basketball team that are the future of our economy. So I love that video, and Panhandle PBS helped us put that together, so I just want to thank them. Unfortunately, our third speaker today did not survive the polar vortex and is still stuck in Kansas City. So unfortunately, we won't be hearing from Dane Stingler today. But I am happy to introduce the next segment of our program, and that's going to be a panel discussion of our speakers, which is going to be moderated by Karen Welch from Panhandle PBS. Most of you know Karen. She's been a fixture of our community for quite some time, and she's now the senior producer at Panhandle PBS. And if you guys have not tuned in to some of the content that they're producing, I highly encourage you to look at that. She's telling phenomenal stories that are coming out of this community. So I really encourage you guys to check out everything that they're producing. One thing that we are going to do during this panel Q&A is take questions from you, the audience. And so if you have your smartphone, which I'm pretty sure most of you do, you can open any of your browsers, Safari, Chrome, and go to Slido, S-L-I-D-O, on your browser, and enter our event code, and you can submit questions directly to Karen that she can ask our panelists. So we're looking for some audience participation. You will not get a grade on this, but we hope that you can ask our panelists some of the questions that you have this morning. So I'd like to welcome our panel to the stage.
Good morning. I come with 2 iPads. Lower this down a little bit. Thank you for everyone for being here. And yes, we've learned a lot this morning from Scott and Tony, so we're just going to get a little bit more in depth on a few things. My first question for you guys is, how do we plan for jobs that don't yet exist?
Man, that's yours, and I'm glad that's yours.
Yeah, that is a tough one, and that's one that I think every community, every educator is dealing with right now. We say, we want to connect employers and educators and get these conversations happening about jobs we need today, but those skills are changing constantly. If we train for one machine, there's new machines. And so there's a lot of interesting research going on, and I'm not the educator, but I work with this a lot, around styles of learning and teaching kids how to be more adaptable. I read something recently that 50 years ago we trained to learn by rote. You remembered everything. You learned memorization because a lot of jobs were rote. You did this, you did it again, you repeated yourself. Those are those jobs that are going away. And there's a degree of creativity and smart thinking and problem solving that's a part of just teaching children to be ready to adapt because they're going to need to learn. We're all going to need to be continuously relearning skills for many of these jobs of the future.
There's an analysis from the Center for Public Policy Priorities based in Austin that says 65% of Texas jobs will require post-secondary education of some kind by 2020, yet we have only 39% of Texans who are expected to have a degree or certification by that time. What should we be telling our legislators in Austin?
That's a big challenge, and we've gotten by very well over the last decade and a half because we've been importing people. During the recession, Texas economy was great, and folks were moving here, especially well-educated folks. I live in Austin, I see it. All that growth in the tech community, many of those jobs were filled by people from California, from Michigan, from all over the country. We were not producing enough of our own talent. And there's a whole range of investments that I think need to be made, but continuing to support our ISDs is critical. Early childhood education, but that's long term. Adult retraining programs are so important to this moment. How do we bring some of those folks that are underemployed, that aren't in the workforce, back in, giving them some of those resources and showing them the education pathways?
Does our low unemployment rate reflect some of that underemployment as well?
Yes, to a degree. There's a large share everywhere of folks that are not in the workforce, that are working age. And we looked at that some in the strategy, and I know AC and other groups are looking at some of this, but challenges related to childcare. For many folks in the community, it's more expensive to work and pay for childcare than it is to stay at home. And that can be one barrier, but there's a number of things out there that we can do to help bring folks back into the workforce.
I have a question for Scott from the audience. Are we heading toward another stock market crash?
I am not pitching my book, but my most recent book the title is literally A History of the United States in 5 Crashes, and it's a history of the 5 modern stock market crashes. So I get that question a lot. I will say this, having written a book about stock market crashes, the first thing that jumps out is that they are all strikingly similar. And fortunately, the second thing is they are all exceedingly rare. It was more than 20 years from the first to the second, 50 years from the second to the third, and so on. So I think that a crash is relatively unlikely. I would probably say very unlikely. I will say this, if there's anything that worries me, and this is a little bit more macroeconomic again, it is this. And I'm not trying to bash the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates too low for too long, which it now seems like they might be about ready to do, inflates asset bubbles. It did so in the 1920s, undeniably, did so in the 1920s, and did so in the first half of the last decade, the previous decade. And that's when things get dangerous, is when we have asset bubbles and asset prices get beyond their rational valuations. So the direct answer would be no. I don't think we're on the cusp of another crash. But the caveat is there are certainly things to worry about.
One question that follows up on that is would a delayed trade deal with China trigger a recession sooner?
Well, a recession is a little bit different. Recessions are relatively common, and they don't have to be debilitating. I think that, the classic definition of a recession, we will almost certainly have one in the next 5 years. That's just, as my mother would say, congratulations, you're normal. So I wouldn't consider, again, a recession to be debilitating. If we were permanently in some sort of trade war with China, that would be horrible for everybody. It would be horrible for Americans, it'd be horrible for everyone around the globe. And I think that's beyond unlikely. So a long-term trade war would be bad for everybody, but I simply don't think it's likely.
In communities of similar size to Amarillo, what are the top 3 factors that contribute or support economic stability while also fueling growth?
Yeah, that's a good one. The top 3. Workforce is definitely one of them. I think we're seeing communities that have made strong investments in education, but that are attracting folks, that are growing quickly. People grow the economy quickly. It makes sense. There's that supply there. Businesses are attracted to that. Infrastructure and connectivity is big, especially property, and it's tremendous. The Amarillo AEDC is a great asset that y'all have in terms of site development and having shovel-ready sites. I can't tell you the number of communities I work in where they have businesses come that are interested in being there, or businesses want to expand. There is nowhere for them to go. There isn't a single site sitting with platting done, with utilities served to it. And these are the things that businesses look for, in addition to workforce, is a literal home for them to be, and that's a very big factor still. I think there's still some hangover from the last recession in terms of speculative building and getting things together, and not every community has the resources that the EDC here does and others to publicly put some of that land together and get it ready. So that's workforce and infrastructure, and a business climate's also another very big one. We hear about companies leaving California. I've seen it. We've done work out there, and affordability, regulations, there's a number of factors, but you're seeing people and businesses leaving a lot of those bigger, higher cost cities and really looking for the opportunities in more mid-sized cities and others where they can operate more effectively, but still very dependent on needing that workforce.
I'm going to combine a couple of audience questions. One is, where is it? I lost it. How important is it for Amarillo what is the hardest truth for Amarillo that we need to look in the eye and face and decide how to deal with? And then somebody asked about, speaking a little bit about how poverty in the city plays into that equation.
Want me to talk about this one?
Yes, I do want you to talk about that.
I think you answered it in the question to a degree, but poverty. And it's a tough question, but racial disparity, a lot of poverty goes along those lines. And these are conversations that are happening in many communities, but they're hard truths that require dialogue and conversation to start moving them forward. But if poverty remains high, regardless of color, poverty, or the reasons, that is a drag on everybody's economy and a drag on the well-being of people in the community. But when you look at the challenges we face providing services while also having a sustainable, growing economy and workforce, if a large share of a community is not participating in that, it's going to create real difficulties in the long run.
I would also say, you asked a question earlier, I would point out that not everybody wants to go to college, and that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that. But I think that business people have not done a very good job of addressing the young people who say, college is not for me, I don't want to go to college, I want to do something with my hands. And that's honorable work, but we've not done a good job of pointing them to the right sorts of careers that satisfy all of their desires. And specifically in Chicago, there are a couple of those careers that we're in desperate shortage of people who can do that. One is welders, particularly technical welders. You know, that's a job that you can do, man or woman, but it's a head of household job. That is, you can make enough money to live the middle class lifestyle that people want if you are a welder or a technical welder, and doesn't require a bachelor's degree. And I don't think we've done a good job of pointing people in that direction. Another one in Chicago is people who can operate a CNC machine, a computerized numerical control machine. Again, those are all jobs that where you can proudly raise a family, you can own your home, nice lifestyle. If your kids want to go to college, you can send them to college. I just think we've done a poor job as business people of recognizing what those jobs are and pointing the right people into those jobs.
Just to add up, that's a great observation, Scott. And that's a cultural conversation too. We're seeing that shift, thankfully, in many communities. But I think for many years we told our kids, go to college, and that means a 4-year degree. College does not mean that. And we said, if you don't do that, you've lost or you're off the path. And we need to have a cultural shift in the nation, and it starts at home of saying, there isn't a push to go to college. There's a pointing to careers, showing children options and what's out there, and helping people find something, because like you said, everywhere, there are so many great jobs that require just a little bit after high school and some good training that make significantly more money than most bachelor's degrees are getting.
A question was, in communities of similar size, what are the top 3 factors? We've already done that, excuse me. How important is it for Amarillo to be aggressive in attracting new businesses and new technology to the area? And what are other cities doing to diversify?
I always say, economic development is that balance of business attraction. You want folks to come in, expansion and retention, which we know is the core of folks in this room. How do we help them? And startups, WT Enterprise Center is terrific. It really is an amazing asset in getting folks to start new companies. I believe in being competitive and trying to attract folks. I think, though, Scott mentioned the Amazon deal. There's been a lot of dialogue in the country that sometimes communities are going after these projects without consulting with their communities. They're just doing this behind back doors, and there's a lot of fear that we're giving away the farm when we're not helping out our own businesses. So I think it's really important to balance the efforts on attraction with a focus on the businesses that are here and making sure that we're showing the love to our own community, if not as much, more so than we are to that attraction. But still, new businesses are great. They create opportunities, they bring wealth. I think folks should be competitive, and many communities are.
And I would say focus on diversification. It is so easy as a human being to do more of what you are already good at. You're good at something in your job, boy, you do that all the time. And the things you're not so good at in your job, well, they are suddenly unimportant. And it's possible to do that when you're building sectors in your economy. There are things that Amarillo is great at, and there are things that you're probably not as good at. Congratulations again, you're normal. You're like every other city in the world. But to the degree that you can bring in businesses that aren't already in your wheelhouse, then you have diversified your economy. And that's really powerful. That's really powerful.
That plays into a question I wanted to ask. Texas Tech University just celebrated a total of $9.2 million in grants received by professionals from its Amarillo Pharmacy School, and efforts are being made to lend a veterinary school.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the value of research institutions to a community.
Can I go first this time?
Yes, go for it.
Here is the thing. And I have heard about those efforts, and I think they're fantastic. They make the entire community smarter, which is a great thing. And one of the things that Chicago is really proud of is the education of our workforce. But not only are you diversifying your workforce and your business base, but you're bringing in people who have different educations, different outlooks, and that is all good. That is all good. So I know you're working hard in those areas, and I wish you the best of luck, because I think that it will pay dividends beyond just bringing in, X numbers of new jobs that pay Y dollars a year. It will have benefits that you can't really measure.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think most folks don't realize, but Texas Tech's medical and health research dollars, it's all spent here in Amarillo. This is already a tremendous research center that many folks aren't necessarily aware of. And when we're thinking about startups and innovation and new businesses, the hope is that research dollars are going to spin off and lead to more. And animal science is so critical. There's a shortage of big animal vets all across this area. We know it's so important. I said to Reagan earlier, but I know I need to contact my legislative representatives in Austin and tell them to vote for this vet school here in Amarillo, because I'm fully in favor of it. And to touch on this a bit too, you asked about the technology side. That's a part of this too. We need to be, all of our businesses, thinking about how we integrate new research, new technology, things that are coming out, because other folks are doing that too, and that's how we stay competitive, diversifying, bringing in new technology, getting this together, and really creating it here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to let Reagan wrap it up.
Well, I think I'm looking at our deck of questions, and we have a ton of questions from the audience. So I think what we may try to do is take some of those questions, get them answered from our panelists, and also continue to communicate them to the community. I think it just shows that we have a lot of questions, but listening from the panel, listening from our guests, there's some great things happening. So again, thank you all for being here. Before you leave, for those of you wondering why you had to fill out a name tag, there's a message we're trying to get out through this event, that our economy is built on the backs of every single one of you in these chairs. It's built on the backs of every single one of the students in our schools. We all play a role in the growth or the decline in our economy. So while you put your name on the name tag, you also put maybe your role in the economy. And what we want to do is to create a visual of what that momentum looks like. So as you leave today, we want you to pick up a card to find out more information about some of these programs. But we have a representation of Amarillo's skyline out in the lobby. So we want you to go out and put your name tag on that skyline to show how you and your role in our economy is part of the greater community in our city. So be a part of it. This is where you start to be a part of the solution and a part of that growth. We thank you so much for coming here. Please get involved, not just in supporting some of the efforts that the EDC is doing, but throughout our community. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.